Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna I'm gonna introduce Suriati first. Suriati is a visiting assistant professor of education at Hobart and William Smith Colleges. She's been involved with technology integration in K through 12 schools for more than 10 years. Her courses are mostly focused on new literacies and understanding both theoretical and practical aspects of multiliteracies. She has published articles on the use of technologies in the classroom in several peer-reviewed journals. She also has a book chapter written on digital storytelling. Okay, so without further ado, the floor is yours, Suryan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's morning here in Rochester, New York, upstate New York. So that's where I am. And for digital storytelling, mine differs slightly from what Amani has presented, because the digital storytelling that I'm looking at is in terms of a multimodal composition. So for this particular presentation, I'm just going to focus on three key elements, which is the what, why, and how of digital storytelling. Now, so let me just give you a brief understanding of what that digital storytelling is for the courses that I am teaching. All right. Now, this digital storytelling, when I talk about digital storytelling, I'm referring to, it is not about substituting analog stories, but it is about transforming stories. Okay. And it is not about sharing stories in isolation, but rather sharing it and making connections with others. And when I talk about digital storytelling, I am also specifically looking at not focusing on the tools, but it's more on crafting that skills of telling a story using multiple modes, which involve the use of text, visual, audio, and video. So as you can see in these visual sketch notes, that idea of digital storytelling is also not about creating a media, but it's more about creating meaning. It is also, a way in which, you can use stories to contribute and to collaborate with one another. So this idea of digital storytelling, I started off with a digital storytelling project with 7-year-olds many years back. But right now, I am currently teaching in a college classroom, undergrad students for a course on perspectives to literacy education. Now, why do I decide on digital stories? It's because number one, I think it allows multiple ways of expressing ideas, and it also fit into the idea of looking at learners, tapping on learners' ability to construct a form of composition that is not just driven by text-based per se. So how I did it with my college students, they are in 3 simple steps. All right. So since the course that I'm teaching, it is a course looking at perspectives to literacy education. So we started off the class with understanding that basic understanding of literacy. And as we know, I think generally when we talk about literacy, everyone would say that literacy is reading and writing. But in this particular course, the concept of literacy is looking at a more expanded approach, looking at moving literacy to literacies, tapping on multi-literacies, where we look at the idea of using multiple modes to engage in meaning making. And that multiple modes, it involves text, visual, audio, and video. So the first part of before they embark on this particular project, my students were introduced to the different theories. So it's literacies, and multi-literacies, looking at how multimodality, or the idea that involve the different modes were being used to construct, to make meanings. So while it is more theoretically driven, they were also given a set of images to look at, to help them to understand how do they construct meanings out of images. And the next step in helping students to create their own digital stories is that I gave them a storyboard. Now, this idea of storyboarding is something that, as I told my students, I would equate it with the concept of planning, because when we are writing a composition, we always need to brainstorm. We always need to do some form of planning. So this storyboarding, if I were to look at how that traditional idea of writing is being transferred to include new technologies, the storyboarding is what I would say brainstorming and planning. And so students were given the opportunity to just basically write down, okay, what is the text that they're going to have on slide 1, and what kind of visual they're going to use, describe it, and whether they're going to include any form of audio or any form of video. So these are the 4 different elements that they should have in the construction of a digital story. And while I require them to have these 4 elements, they are to selectively choose which particular ones would fit into the different slides or the different screens. So the choice is left to them. Now, considering that many students are familiar with MacBook, so I got them to use, iMovie. And before they create their own stories, some of those examples of digital stories that I showed them, they come from Story Center, which you can see from here. There are multiple digital stories in this particular website itself that you can explore later on. And they even have free webinars on storytelling and how that storytelling can be done across different perspectives. And we also look at a website which is known as Educational Purposes of Digital Storytelling, to help students understand why they're doing this particular project. Now, because this course looks into perspectives to literacy education, so students were told to create their own literacy autobiography. Now, here in the literacy autobiography, the idea of literacy is defined as a social practice. What that means is that the literacy that we are looking at in the literacy autobiography that they created, they are not the traditional skills of reading and writing. So let me just show you one example of a student's work, which I've obtained permission to show to all of you. All right, and then we will proceed from there if you have further questions on the whole idea of digital stories. It's a short one. It's about 5 to 6 minutes.
Music has the unique ability to reach large masses of people. Every single person on this planet is affected by music in one way or another. Music acts as a sort of duality of both the lyrics and composition tell a story.
I want you to notice the use of videos, the use of text, the audio, the narration, and the visuals that this student used for this particular digital story.
Often working simultaneously. Growing up, music, more specifically hip-hop, became my hobby. I went through school in Geneva Public School System, where we had hip-hop classes, clubs, performances at pep rallies, and cipher circles in the cafeteria. It was in high school that I really learned to appreciate hip-hop, and music in general, as a form of expression and storytelling. Music is a perfect medium for conveying vital lessons and messages, as it is often much more consumable than a physical text, especially to a younger audience. Not only that, it was created out of the voices of underrepresented youth, and there is much to be learned from the art form. Hip-hop is known as a genre for its use of storytelling, though some may argue that contemporary hip-hop has diverged from this for a more hyped-up, party-driven sound. However, recently in the hip-hop community, there's been an insurgence of storytelling and authentic vibes through the highly underappreciated Buffalo group, Griselda Records. Seeing that Buffalo is only an hour and a half away from Geneva, I feel it is fitting to discuss their work. Griselda's founder, Westside Gunn, is constantly releasing 2 to 3 projects and sometimes even more a year. On each track, he works hand in hand with producers, such as Derringer and The Alchemist, to get the right sound for the story that he's about to tell. Unlike the majority of mainstream hip-hop today, Westside Gunn cares less about melody and radio playability and focuses more on his cadence, flow, and lyrics. Hip-hop has always been braggadocious, with artists talking about their criminal activity and gang affiliations. Most of this isn't true and is used to build up credibility, yet it can encourage the youth to follow these paths when they don't know the consequences of their actions. Such fake rappers include artists such as Rick Ross, 6ix9ine, or Drake. You gon' make someone around me catch a body like that. Yeah, okay. Although Westside Gunn and the rest of Griselda, his brother Conway the Machine, and cousin Benny the Butcher, were really about the lifestyles that they convey through their lyrics, it is their authenticity that can deliver positive messages to the youth. It could be argued that some of Westside Gunn's songs incorporate elements of horror, as he explains his time selling drugs, getting locked up, and seeing his family and friends die in the streets.
Shit is crazy. So I think when you hear all of that in the music, and we've been through a lot, like, you know, I done been to the feds, and Benny done been to the state and the feds, and, you know, my brother was locked up, he got shot, you know, in the head, a machine gun died. Like, you just hear a lot of the pain, man. I'll just be honest, you know what I'm saying?
Thus conveying his vulnerability in this lifestyle. His brother Conway was shot in the neck, and half his face is paralyzed as a result, a physical reminder of the struggles that they dealt with on a day-to-day basis. It was through the music, however, that he was able to transcend these lived experiences, sharing them with others and telling his story so others didn't have to live it themselves. As an aspiring music producer and overall fan of hip-hop, I look to the productions of songs to think about what sounds help convey certain messages and themes within music. Let's check out a few examples by Westside Gunn.
Miss my baby when I'm out on tour. Just loyalty I hope for. I came home and copped the Rolls Royce. We got fake kids, 1961 ladies, 3 bottles of Ace. We got faded talk to the sun came up. I promised you the biggest South ever. Did walk through the corners and got this level.
Even without reading the title, we can feel that this song is dedicated to a significant other. The vocal sample of the beat and the absence of loud, in-your-face drums complements this theme.
Wish you could see me now. Wish baby could see me now.
Here, the jazzy samples work to aid Gunn's reflective delivery as he touches on all the kinds of people he knows from his hometown and how he was able to overcome them all through his music. This verse is broken up by a hook where he wishes his cousin Machine Gun Black and friend Sly Green, who were both taken by street violence, could see what he has become. It is here that we see Gunn being introspective while still maintaining his credibility as an artist. Hip-hop is very much a form of multimodal text, incorporating aspects of poetry, storytelling, orality, expression, and musicality all into one medium. Since coming to campus in 2017, I have created amazing friendships through hip-hop and have collaborated with several students on different projects. Each person I work with carries their own stories and experiences, which I am able to translate into sound. Hip-hop has allowed me to learn from these lived experiences of others and help me better understand the lives of those around me. To quote Irvin Weathersby Jr., "The U.S. began as a country with corrupted ideals, and today they are stale and reek with the sour stench of unwavering tradition. Hip-hop is ready to offer answers, only if Americans embrace its lessons." I believe that we can learn a lot from hip-hop. Its accessibility to the youth should not be underlooked, and it could be utilized as a great tool for learning about culture and expression, and carries a deep history that often gets forgotten by scholars. I am thankful for the genre for shaping a part of who I am today, and it allows me to think more critically about music as literacy and how it can be used to convey messages to a wider audience of listeners.
All right, let me just get there. Okay, so that is one example of a student's work. He specifically chose to look at the topic of hip hop literacy because it resonates a lot with his life, and he was exposed to hip hop literacy ever since he was in high school. So that is one example of a digital story that is done by a student in this class. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to leave open questions if you have any questions in relation to the topic of digital storytelling. Now, coming from a different background where I've taught across different contexts, when I first started teaching digital storytelling with elementary school children, it seems that the difference is that when you want elementary students to work on such digital stories, the tool that you use must also be something that is simple. So some years back, I think I tried using Photo Story with 7-year-olds, and it was I would say that it was something that students really enjoy doing it, basically because it's simple. So the whole point of getting working on digital story, as I mentioned to you, is not about using the tool, but it's more how do you create that meaning in such a way that the tool should not be rather a barrier to the creation of a multimodal composition. So with that, I will pass to the next person, and we will speak more, during the Q&A. Thank you.
Well, okay, thank you, Suriati. Now, Maha. Okay, so I'm so pleased